What's up, guys? So I'm Josh, Fab Hair by Josh on Instagram. I've been in the industry for a little over 10 years now. I am a creative color specialist. As I said a little bit ago, I'm in Southwest Florida. I'm also, as Willie just said, I'm a award-winning colorist. I won BTC OneShot for unconventional color last year, actually using the technique I'm going to be showing you guys today, which is my Halo Prism technique. So if any of you guys have not heard of that technique before, I'll grab a finished mannequin and actually show you what the result is. So this is one that I had already done. I curled one side, left the other side straight. So you guys can see you've got a really holographic effect. And the reason I call it Halo Prism is when you look here, it's almost like you have rings of color, right? Almost like you have halos of color. So when I was trying to figure out what to call this, I was like, it's like rings, it's like halos, rainbow, Halo Prism. And you can see how drastic the difference of the effect is when it's straight or curled. So we'll jump into some formulating. So I'm going to be using all Pulp Riot today. And I'm going to be working in like a rainbow fashion, obviously. So I'm going to be doing purple, pink, orange, yellow, green, and blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with clear in my bowls. And since I'm mostly going to be doing the top, I'm going to start with just a little bit of clear. So I'm going to go about that much clear. I'm going to do my purple in this bowl. So I'm going to do a little bit of pastel purple. Just a little bit of a brighter purple, mix that up really nicely. So that's going to be our purple, which is it's a really bright, beautiful purple. So we'll start with that. Now we'll go into our blue. And again, I'm going to start with clear in my bowl, just as I did with the purple. And with Pulp Riot, their neon blue is super, super pigmented. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of color in my bowl first. Mix that up really nicely. When you're mixing your colors, it's always easier to go back in and add more tone or add more depth than it is to try and lighten a color. So whenever you're mixing colors with clear or pastels with deeper tones, start with your lightest color in your bowl first, and then slowly add in a little bit at a time of your deeper color.
Why the clear, Josh?
So I want my colors to be a little bit softer than they are just straight up. I'm going to create a little bit more of a softer effect with my rainbow rather than super, super bright. Creating a little more of a pastelized holographic rainbow. All right, so I've got my blue. Set that aside. Now we'll go in with our green. So I'm going to start again with clear in my bowl, and then I'm going to go in with neon green. I'm going to add a good amount of that.
So for the measuring questions, today Josh doesn't have a scale, so that's why he's eyeballing. We're working with what we have. So for everyone who's asking questions about you're not measuring, how do you make sure you get the same outcome? That's why we're doing it this way.
So also when I'm working with semi-permanent colors, I always eyeball it. I don't usually measure out proportions of certain colors into my formulas. I'm all about with colors like this, what you see is what you get. So I like to mix it up until I'm visually happy with it, and then that's what I work with. I can see a couple questions coming in. I saw someone ask, do I need a developer? So with these, again, these are direct dyes. These are semi-permanent direct dyes with Pulp Riot, so you don't use a developer. You're going to apply these directly on clean, pre-lightened hair. So now I'm going to go in with our yellow. starting with a little bit of clear, and then I'm going to be using Satire from Pulp Riot, which is our new yellow. And for those of you guys that don't know, I'm a Riot Squad Pulp Riot platform educator. I really love this yellow.
Ooh, the new yellow is amazing.
Yeah, the new yellow is one of my favorite colors.
Kari Callis says she misses you.
Oh, I miss you too. I added a little bit more clear into my yellow because I want to soften it just a little bit more. Then we'll go in with our orange. Again, clear in my bowl. I'm going to be using lava. I'm going to do just a little bit because, again, this is a pretty bright color. And I'm going for a little more of a softer effect. Mix that up nicely. Now, is there anybody watching that has tried my Halo Prism technique before?
We have a couple people on here that have. Olivia, Taylor, Ginger. Jane says, I'm about to. Angie says, yes.
Awesome. Very cool.
Monica says she did it on herself. Lindsay. So sounds like you have a lot of fans on here. Sounds like you have a lot of fans, buddy.
That's awesome. All right, so now I've got my pink mixed up. Now we're going to go ahead and get into sectioning. So whenever I have my guest in my chair, I always place my Halo Prism sectioning based off of their part. So if they part right down the middle, I'm going to have their section be about this. If they part off to the side, I'm going to take my section and I'm going to shift it. You always want their part line to be centered in your section. If there's someone that likes to flip-flop their hair, I always go straight in the top. Another tip is, so I like to work with mesh sheets. I'll be directing everything forward, painting it on that. You don't want your section to be any wider than this. So I always go about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch in from the sides of my mesh. That way it's all nice and clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go about mid-eyebrow to mid-eyebrow, and then I'm going to go back just below the crown, creating a horseshoe section.
What about if they part on the side, Josh? I feel like you said that, sorry.
Yeah, so if someone parts on the side, instead of taking your section straight in the top, you're going to shift your entire section over. So say they part right here. For example, let me kind of bring this over. So say she parts her hair over on this side, okay? Instead of taking your section here, you're going to bring your section like that. So you always want their part line to be centered in your Halo Prism section. So you're going to bring this back to the back. Come over from this side. Sectioning mannequin hair, isn't that everyone's favorite? Now, when you're doing your Halo Prism sectioning, it's very important to go past, like just below the crown in the back. If you stop too far forward, that color is not going to translate all the way around the head. It's going to kind of stop right here and you're going to have a gap in the back. So I'm going to take this down. I'm going to go right below the crown there in the back. And I'm going to swoop that back up and around the other side. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm actually going to be leaving all of this blonde, and then I'm going to be doing Halo Prism on top. So we're essentially, with this technique, you're creating a veil of color. Okay. Make sure I get all those tangles out of there. Now, do you guys see how we go from about mid-eyebrow to mid-eyebrow all the way to the back and then back around? So I'm gonna secure my section, and then I'm gonna take clips and I'm going to make sure this is all clipped and secure from that top section. And whenever you guys are doing a Halo Prism, you can do anything with the underneath. You can leave it blonde, you can leave it natural. You can do one color, you can do melting. If you wanna be really bold and do a prism on the entire head, go for it. There's really no rules with this. So now what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna take a really thin slice right at the hairline. And the thickness of your slice is very important with this technique. You're only surface painting. So you're not working that color and you're not driving the color and you're literally painting the surface. So if you have too thick of a section, you're gonna see a lot of kind of like holes or gaps within your color. So we're gonna take a really thin slice, secure this back. We're gonna take this forward, and we're gonna take our mesh, place our mesh directly under that. And then usually when I start my Halo Prism, I reach over and I grab a brush, and whichever color I grab, I'll work around in a rainbow pattern from that color. So whether I start with blue, I'll either do purple, pink, orange, yellow, green, or I'll go from blue and then green, yellow, orange, pink, purple, and continue going around. So I'm actually gonna start with blue. Then I'm gonna do a little bit right there at the top. Then we'll go into our green. You don't want to overlap. You don't want to blend the colors. You want to paint everything in straight lines. And I know starting off doing this, it's going to be a little crazy because you're literally painting solid lines in there. But doing all of this over direction is going to create all of that softness for you. And your first section is always a little more of a pain. You're gonna have hairs that are gonna wanna stick to the brush and the color's gonna kind of drag down a little bit. But after your first section, it's very easy. I'm gonna show you guys a really cool trick once we finish this. And if you guys can see, I'll bring the camera in a little bit more so you guys can get a closer view. As I'm applying my color, I'm kind of pressing. I'm taking the brush and I'm lining it right up with the color before, pressing down and moving the bristles back and forth, just like that. What that's gonna do is it's gonna roll those hairs back and forth and ensure that you're getting all sides and you're getting proper saturation. So we're gonna go back into our blue. And you're going to continue the rainbow pattern going all the way down your section until you reach the end.
If you were doing a full head technique with this, Josh, would you start in the same place?
So usually when I'm doing a Halo Prism technique, I don't typically do a full head of this because it is such a tedious and time-consuming technique. I usually do pretty much like a veil or a mohawk section on the top. Sometimes I'll go a little bit wider and I'll work with two meshes side by side. But what I have done a lot is I've done like a really wide section on the top, almost a full mohawk, and then done like rainbow panels underneath to kind of get a similar effect. But if you're wanting to create a full head of this technique, you would just want to direct everything forward. So when you take your sides, you're going to want to direct everything forward. That way when it lays naturally, you're going to get that diffusion and that kind of like shattered rainbow effect. Right, so just about to the end here. And also, when you guys try this for the first time, I suggest starting with thicker bands of color than I'm doing. The thinner bands you go with, the longer it's going to take you. And especially for your first time, it's going to be a little bit slower working through it. And if your guest has thick hair, you're going to be there for a long time working through the top.
Do you get concerned about the color oxidizing and the length, the time of the process, etc.?
No, with Pulp Riot and with any kind of like semi-permanent direct dyes, it's not really going to continue to process over time. Once it's reached that 25-30 minute mark, it's deposited all it's going to do, and it's not going to continue getting darker or anything like that.
And the color in your bowl as you're doing this it's not going to affect that color either, correct? Because
Nope.
It's a direct pigment.
Exactly. So I'm going to take another really thin slice of hair. And again, you guys want to be able to see through your section. If you can't see through it, then you're taking too much hair. So we're going to pull this forward. Bring this down so you guys can see what I'm doing. And you're going to want to kind of put your hand behind the mesh. You don't want to lift the mesh up because then you're removing over direction. You want to keep that mesh straight down, but press the mesh up against the back of your section. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start painting our colors from the bottom working up. And the reason for that is because doing this, you're going to be anchoring the hairs at the end as you work up. So you're not going to have any hairs that are going to want to stick to the brush. Nothing's going to create drag in your color, and it's all going to stay nice and clean. Again, I'm taking my brush and I'm kind of like taking my bristles and gently going back and forth. Not overlapping, not blending our colors together. And you guys can use this technique as well to create like rainbow shine lines. You can do a lot of stuff with this placement. So say you're wanting to do a shine line with this, instead of just doing a little bit of that blue, you would take that blue, maybe a couple inches down, paint your rainbow, and then take that same color you did at the top and apply that at the bottom. And then everything's going to get directed forward, and that blue is going to start stretching up at the top, and you're going to get a rainbow shine line that's going to carry around the hair, around the head at a really cool angle.
If you're not familiar with that, we had an amazing artist from Michigan on the other day named Jessica Phillips, and she did a shine line application. It's on our YouTube channel, Sharkfin Shears.
And sometimes what I'll even do, you guys, when I'm doing this, I'll do, some bands a little bit thicker than others. I'll do some really thin, some a little bit thicker. And that'll create a lot of play within your final look. So really just kind of get creative with it.
Where did the idea for this come from?
So it's actually a really cool story. So I had a client sit in my chair one day. She found me on Instagram. She comes in, she sits down, and she said, so I want to let you do absolutely anything with my hair, but I have two things. She said, one, it has to be the best thing you've ever done. And two, it can't be like anything else you've ever done before. And she's like, I follow you on Instagram, so I know the stuff you post. It can't be like anything you've done. So I was like, oh, great, no pressure, right? I usually have no problem coming up with something crazy. But as I had a global lightning process on her, I was in the back room and I was talking with a couple other stylists that I worked with. And I was like, I have no idea what to do. And I started like playing around with ideas in my head. Like, what if I section like this and over direct everything forward? I had no idea how it's going to come out. So I did it. And when I was rinsing, it was one of those moments where I had the biggest grin on my face, and I couldn't stop like laughing because I was so excited about what I created. Yeah, I mean, it was really just someone coming in and pushing me to do something I had never done before. I had no idea that was going to blow up, that I would then start, traveling all around the world, teaching my technique, attending hair shows, working on stages. It was just crazy. And then leading me to win a OneShot award. So it's a really interesting story, really.
How scared were you though? Seriously, on a scale of 1 to 10, bro, you're laying this out on someone for the first time who you just met. What was running through your mind?
So I was like, I told her, I said, I have a crazy idea. I think it's going to work. If it doesn't, we'll figure something out. And she was totally game for it. She's like, if it doesn't work out, I'm sure it's still going to look cool. Totally was fine with me, going way out and doing something totally different. But I mean, yeah, I was pretty nervous because, I was doing something I had never done before. I didn't really know what I was doing. Oh, and it took me forever. She had very thick hair and her hair was pretty long. So just doing this top part, I toned the rest of her hair like silvery, icy, and just did the top part. And it took me, 3.5 hours to apply the color. But like I said, the result was amazing. And after I started posting it, I had people, messaging me saying that they wanted that color. And it's really crazy. I mean, even to this day, I'm always thanking her. I'm like, because of you pushing me, like I've grown so much in my career from that.
That's amazing. Did you pre-lighten this mannequin, or was this already this way?
So this mannequin was already this light. This is one of my favorite ones to work with because it's fairly good quality hair. There's a good amount of hair and it's super, super light. But even if you're working on a client when you're using Pulp Riot, if you're working on a client that's naturally this light, you still want to manually open up that cuticle a little bit. That way you get proper saturation. Because this is a semi-permanent direct dye, there's no developer, there's no activator, there's nothing that drives it into the hair. So you have to make sure that you're prepping the hair to be able to accept that color. Once I get to the top of this section, I'm going to show you guys how we transition from one color into our next color, which is going to start the rainbow root effect, as you guys can see in this one, how we go from our blue, purple, pink, orange, yellow. I'm going to show you guys how we transition from one color to the next. Let me close that. There we go.
Lots of questions about brand specific, like could I do this with a different color line?
I'm sure you could. You want to be careful that you're not working with too deep of colors because deeper colors tend to bleed a lot more. I personally, not just because I work with Pulp Riot and I'm affiliated with them, but I also like the fact that these tones, when I rinse this out, it's going to rinse clear. So I don't have anything that blends into one or the other. Everything stays just as vibrant as when I'm putting it on. But I've had people create looks similar to this very successfully using other brands as well.
To produce this halo effect, this rainbow effect, what are the amount of recommended colors? Like 4 to 6, no less than 4, no more than 6?
So I usually say at least 3 to 4. If you only have if you only have, say, 2 colors, you're not going to see very much transition or very much like of a holographic effect in your finished result. The more colors you work with, the more shattered of a rainbow effect you're going to get. I've done this with like 10 bowls of color sitting out in front of me. So I'd have like, you know, different tones of purple, different tones of blue with the rest of my rainbow, and it created a mind-blowing effect. But yeah, you at least, I always say you're going to get the best effect when you work with a full rainbow. So now that we're here at the top, I'm going to bring her in closer so you guys can see better. I'm going to show you how we transition from one color into the next. So I'm going to take my blue, and you guys can see right there, there's pretty much a line where we stopped at. So I'm going to paint my blue right up to that line. Then I'm going to take my next color, and if you're ever confused as where to go from here, take a look down your section, find where you are, and you're going to look above it. So we've got our blue here. So now we're going to go into purple. So we're going to keep this rainbow pattern working all the way back through the head. So I'm going to take my brush, a little bit of color on the end, and I'm going to tap it in right at the root. And then as you continue bringing sections forward, that slice of color is going to grow, and then you'll go into the pink, and then the orange, green, and so on, working through the head.
Is that a suggestion or a rule? Like where you look at the blue, see what's above that, it's purple. Is that to get the desired rainbow halo effect?
Yeah, so that's to keep the effect going all the way consistent through the head. And also, whenever you guys are doing this, I've had people ask me questions of why I choose to put certain colors next to each other. You always want to have colors next to each other that are going to work well together. So you don't want to put, you know, purple, yellow, pink, green, blue, orange, because where those colors meet, you're going to get a little bit of kind of like a muddiness or like a dull effect in between your colors. So going in a rainbow pattern where, you know, purple works well with blue and pink, pink works well with purple and orange, so on. So all of these colors are going to play nicely together, and you're going to get a beautiful finished result.
Color theory, right? Don't put 2 colors next to each other. They're going to neutralize each other.
Absolutely. Do you guys see how I'm getting a good amount of tension in here? You want to make sure that you lay your section down with a good amount of tension. That way you don't have hairs that are like, you know, kind of going all over the place. And again, taking my mesh, gently pressing it against the back, but not creating too much elevation, because when we create elevation here, we're removing this over direction coming forward. And we want to have as much over direction as possible to get the best effect. So again, I'm going to start from the bottom, work my way up. And once you guys do this a couple times, you'll get quicker at it. Even a lot of times, you know, once you get a couple sections in, you'll find that you're picking up the pace and you're getting a little bit quicker. Has anybody tried this technique that struggled with it, that didn't quite understand or ran into any kind of roadblocks?
How many sections do you typically do before transitioning colors at the base?
It's usually about every 2 slices you'll incorporate your next color, but I always watch and determine based off of the thickness of each band of color. So for example, once my blue got to be about the same thickness as the rest of them, that's when I incorporated my next color.
Someone said they tried this and didn't understand the transition part well. So hopefully that answered your question, Taylor. If it didn't, please let me know.
Yeah, I feel like the transition from one color to the next is usually where people struggle a little bit. So hopefully this will kind of give you guys a little more of an idea on how to, transition from one section to the next. And also, as you guys can see, I'm my 3rd section in. I'm not putting anything in between to separate my sections. We're laying everything directly on top of the previous section. And you also, when you're painting your colors on, you want to make sure that you're putting a decent amount of color on there. You don't want to just scrape a little bit of color. You want to make sure you're putting a good amount of color on, because the excess color from here is going to color the underside of your next section. And I've even seen, what's that?
Sorry. The longer hair, is that part of the requirement to get the full effect? So if someone wanted to do this on shorter hair, would you still be able to get that effect?
So I've done this on hair that's like this long before, and it looks absolutely amazing. You get a really cool holographic effect. However, if you're wanting to get the full effect of the color, transitioning all the way around the head, you're going to want to work with longer hair and minimal layers. But like I said, you can do this with fairly short hair, and it's absolutely amazing. I've got a handful of photos on my Instagram showcasing this technique on shorter hair as well. And it's some of the shorter looks I've done with this are some of my favorite that I've done.
What about curly hair?
You can definitely do this on textured hair. What I usually recommend is flat ironing the hair first, and then applying your color, and then after you rinse your color out, you can let their natural texture take over. But when you're applying this, if you're trying to work with hair that's curly, it's going to be very, very difficult. So once you flat iron, get everything nice and smooth and easier to work with, you're not going to find yourself fighting with the hair as much. Does that answer your question?
It did for me, but we'll see if that person, okay.
Cool. She said, getting my attention. And also, for everybody watching right now, today I'm more so kind of giving you guys like a little introduction to this technique. I'm only going to be working on a few sections through the top. If you guys want education where I work through the entire section, shifting from one color through the next, and finishing with styling and photos and all of that, I am going to be launching a online education course over the next couple weeks. And that would be a great tool for any of you guys that want more in-depth education. I will be going super into depth with that, rather than just kind of like, hitting the basics. And also, if anyone ever has questions after this, feel free to follow me on Instagram. And if you ever have any questions, shoot me a DM. I try and answer every message. It may not be right away, but I'll definitely get back to you guys.
If you made your color panels thicker, let's say it was twice the size your color that you're applying than what it is now, would that change? I know it would change the effect. Would it change it in a bad way? Could you go thicker with each color section?
Oh, you could absolutely go thicker. It wouldn't be quite as holographic, but it would still be beautiful. You'd still have a really nice rainbow effect. If you're wanting a really like super bold, shattered holographic effect, the thinner you go with your bands, the more so that effect is going to be. But you can definitely say you even wanted like your bands to be that thick. I have some people that I've done this on whose hair is down to their waist, and I've done each band like 3 inches thick, and it still gives a really, really beautiful effect. Also, when you guys are doing this, you're going to see the best result on people who have slightly longer hair with minimal layers, because that's when you're really going to see that color translate all the way around the head. When they've got shorter hair or a lot of layers, it's going to appear a lot more shattered. Both results are going to be as mind-blowingly beautiful, but if you're wanting to have that, you know, that true Halo Prism effect, working with longer, more one-length hair is going to give you the best result. Now, another thing that I'll do sometimes when I'm doing this on an actual person, you know, we don't want color getting all over their forehead. I'll actually take another piece of mesh and I'll rip it down the middle and I'll put it underneath. And usually when I'm doing this on a guest and I'm doing a full head, this is all around sides and back is already finished colored. So when I stick this underneath, it'll actually stick to the color on the sides and keep their forehead even, you know, protected more from the color. All right, so I'm pretty happy with the thickness of my purple there. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to stamp in our next color, which is going to be pink. We'll take our next section forward. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I'm answering a lot of them because a lot of it's about brand specific stuff. So instead of you, Pulp Riot is the color. What mesh? Do you have a preferred mesh?
So for me, all of my tools with my mesh, my foils, my brushes, my bowls, everything is color track. Similar to with Pulp Riot, how I'm affiliated with Pulp Riot, I'm also affiliated with Color Track. But I mean, you guys can really use whatever you're comfortable using. I also suggest working with a brush that has fairly soft bristles. It helps place that color in nicely. When you're working with bristles that are super coarse and super like rough almost, it's going to be a lot more difficult to softly apply that color in.
Why do you prefer mesh over a foil?
So I like using mesh, number one, because when I'm painting it, you guys see how you can see the color through here? So while I'm painting, and this is in front of my client's face, they're also able to get excited because they can see that color showing through. Also, it allows a little bit of light through for them. So they're not like totally in the dark. And also because it's easier to work with. I find that foil tends to like slip around a lot more when I'm working. The mesh tends to kind of like stay right in place.
Sustainability.
Yes. And also these mesh sheets, you guys, are reusable, which is really, really cool. I can wash it, and then reuse it. But you can use anything you want to paint on. You can use mesh, you can use film sheets, you can use foil, anything.
Pulp Riot specific question. Somebody seems to have some staining issues with the scalp. Any suggestions, especially with the velvet?
So the deeper tones, especially like velvet, you will definitely get some staining. I just suggest trying to work as clean as possible. That way, you know, you're not getting it very much on their face or their hairline. But as far as like staining of the scalp, it's kind of inevitable and it's going to happen. I always just tell my guests that, you know, after the first wash, it'll pretty much come off. Also, when you're working with Pulp Riot, you don't want to shampoo when you're finished. You'll apply for, or you'll process for 30 to 45 minutes and then rinse with cool water and then style. So when you're just rinsing that color off, you're not really like cleansing the scalp. So you will have some residual color there. So once they shampoo it for the first time after a couple days, that will typically lift off of their scalp.
About 3:45, Josh.
All right. So I think we're going to go ahead and we'll wrap it up here since I just finished up that section. I'm going to go ahead and finish the top of this head and process her and style her, and I'll post photos on my Instagram story later. But with this look, it's going to be very similar to this one, especially the way I'm applying my colors. You can see I started with blue, then went into purple, into pink. So we're going to get a very similar effect, except instead of blue underneath, she's going to be blonde. So I'm going to finish applying this process for 30 to 45 minutes, rinse with cold water, and then style. And if any of you guys have any questions or you want to reach out, feel free to contact me on Instagram at fabhairbyjosh. Yeah, and thank you guys all for tuning in today.
Can we talk
a lot away from this?
Can we talk about a couple of aftercare things real quick? Like aftercare tips. Somebody talked about aftercare. So again, I know you're brand specific, but specific types of shampoo. You know, how often should they shampoo? Any tips you could give your guests so this semi-permanent color will last as long as possible?
Yeah, so I always tell my guests, wash no more than 2 to 3 times a week with cool water. The colder water you can stand, the better, because it keeps that cuticle sealed shut. When you start using warmer water and hot water, it's going to open up that cuticle and it's going to allow that color to fade quickly. So washing less frequent with cooler water, keeping heat styling to a minimum. So you don't want to, you know, be flat ironing, curling your hair with 450 degrees. I usually tell people, you know, 325 is good. You don't really need to go above that. Using a really good sulfate-free shampoo and conditioner, and, you know, keeping your hair out of chlorine, keeping it protected from the sun. Those are going to be the best ways to keep up with this. And also when you do this on a client, when they come back in 6 weeks, it's not necessarily a touch-up. You're technically doing the entire thing again. So it's very, very high maintenance for the most part.
So you're did you say every 6 weeks typically?
Yeah, I usually have people returning in about 5 to 6 weeks, depending on the tone of the color we did. If it's a little more pastel, they're back in about 4. And if it's on the deeper side, they can usually go about 8 to 10. And if I need to lift their roots, I usually do that every other visit rather than lifting out their hair and removing their color every single time. I'll do that every other visit. That way we keep the integrity of their hair in good health.
I know it's different everywhere, but we always get asked this question. How long does this process take you generally in the salon now? And this one's really difficult, but I'll ask it anyway. What's your pricing look like?
So my application time in the salon, I usually book about 4 hours to do this. That includes, time for me to apply, process, rinse, cut them, style. I always take photos afterwards. So when they come in for their consult, which is another thing, I require a consultation prior to booking. So when they come in for their consultation, right away, they know that they're going to be there for extra time for me to take photos. If I'm lifting out color, like doing a global lightning and then going in with this, they're there anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. So this could be a full day service. And I personally charge hourly for this. That way I don't have like just a base price. And if, I have one that takes me 3 hours and one that takes me 6, if I have a base price of whatever, I know I'm doing it hourly. I know I'm still getting compensated for my time, my product.
I think that's great because several questions popped up right away where when you said 4 hours, you're not just doing this short technique that you showed us, the entire mohawk. You're generally doing something underneath. You may be lifting the entire head, et cetera, right? Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm doing this, like typically when I have a client come in and get a Halo Prism done, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, I'm usually doing like a rainbow melt underneath, or even like some kind of other rainbow technique underneath. So they're super, super rainbow and vibrant. So it's not usually just doing this top section like I'm doing on my mannequin here. It's usually full head, super, super intense rainbows.
And you're just focusing on the guest in your chair at that 4 to 6 to 8 hours, right? Nothing tucked in between, no running around like a maniac.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't double book when I do stuff like this. I block out that amount of time. They get my full time because on average they're spending anywhere from $300 to $500. So if I have them sitting in my chair and I'm moving them around, doing people in between and stuff like that, I don't feel like they're really getting my time worth. So they get, that whole slot of time to themselves. I also usually I'll order lunch for them and stuff like that. So it's a whole experience. It's not like they're just, sitting there and being pushed around. They really feel like they're getting the most for what they're paying.
Awesome. The feedback has been amazing. At this point, I just want to say thank you. I've said it hopefully in every one of these, but if I haven't, if it wasn't for artists like you and everyone who's come on in the previous weeks, Sharkfin wouldn't be able to do this. So please, if you think about sending us a DM for the free education, you can, but please DM the artist who was on, because if it wasn't for Josh today, Sharkfin, I wouldn't be able to do this. So please take the time to thank whoever, whatever artist that you've been watching, whether it's Sharkfin or somebody else, because they are making this possible. And with that, Josh, I just want to leave off with the last little bit from you. You can take this opportunity, remind everybody what your Instagram page is, and just leave us with some words of wisdom, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah. So again, my Instagram is FabHair by Josh. And I just want to say, keep yourself inspired. Don't let yourself fall into like a dark hole. Watch as much education as you can. Grab a mannequin, try different things. Keep your creative juices flowing. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I have online education coming. I also travel as an educator. So if you're a salon owner and you want to host, once all this crazy stuff is over, reach out to me.
Awesome. I just want to say thanks, Josh, for joining us. If you could, it would be great, because as you're aware, these are going on our YouTube and our Instagram. So once you're done, if you could take a couple of fabulous pictures so we could put the afters up on our page so people know what they're looking at, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Be safe. Have a great day, man. If anybody needs anything, just let us know.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. We'll do it again.
Awesome.
All right, man. Take care. Bye.